Welcome to a special edition of Cards on the Table. Sitting across a table here from a very familiar face, you all know him very well, Keith Hackett. We're going to talk about You Are the Ref, the aims of You Are the Ref, and indeed, we think, the achievements of You Are the Ref. But I think there's a good case for renaming the Ref Show, because you're a grumpy old man, really, aren't you, Keith Hackett?
I guess I am. When I see...
You admit it?
Yeah, I think that when I see performances that are of referees below the expectations, my expectations, then yeah, I do get annoyed. I get annoyed because I think in the period that I was with the PGMOL, I laid the foundation of fitness levels, expectations in terms of movement and positioning, and of course accuracy in decision making. And if we take last year, when we really started with the YATR, then we were seeing week in and week out some appalling decisions. In fact, admitted by Mike Riley, who I was holding accountable. As the guy who's the head of the PGMOL, then he is accountable. So yeah, it wasn't a personal vendetta. It was more about saying, look guys, you've got the foundation. It was in place when I left it. Now get it to that particular point.
What about the perception that yourself, having worked for PGMOL and been general manager, Roger Dilks having worked for the setup, a prominent member of our team, RefCam manager, and others, Glenn Turner, for instance, former World Cup assistant referee, Mark Halsey, all of you have worked for the system, and suddenly you were attacking the system. And yet there's been a balance, because this season, as we speak, performances have been better, and you've said so.
Well, I think that what we've seen is, last year, we were probably seeing, first of all, the basis of appointments. If you remember, there was a period when Mark Clattenburg was hardly getting appointments. And you suddenly say, hold on, he's the #1 referee and he's not getting appointments. What's the problem? So that was an error. And I think the appointment process was an error. And sometimes we were seeing referees, you know, there are 3 tiers of performers in the Premier League, select group. Those that are really, really good. Those that are treading water and going nowhere, and probably at the end of the day, I was suggesting needed to be removed. I was being as hard as that because I'd done that in the past. Yeah. You know, the expectations are, you know, I was one of the originators of talking to Sir Dave Richards to say, look, can we have professional refereeing? On the basis that I'd lost 2 jobs and that the game itself was getting faster, all those aspects. So if you've influenced people, and the Premier League as well, to invest, then you expect, like all people who invest, a return on that investment.
What about the principle of former referees being harshly critical on occasions, as you and the team have been, of current referees? There are people out there who just think, hey, that's below the belt.
Am I doing anything different than Alan Shearer, Mark Lawrenson? You know, Match of the Day pundits, Talk Sport. I think that what we've got to recognise in the game is that, you know, the Premier League is the best league in the world. It purports that, and I think it is, and I support that view. The Football League itself has more supporters than Serie A in Italy. So we've got, historically, a very serious game that's played at high levels. And our expectation should be that referees are the very best in the world. So when we see referees who are performing less than the expectation, then I think what we've tried to do is do what the pundits do. And I think the weakness of the PGMOL in the last year, 18 months, has been the fact that nobody from the PGMOL have come out and supported the referees. You know, I mean that initial statement 2 years ago, we get 98% of decisions correct, is for me an arrogant statement. It's unworthy, because the spectator who pays his money, and by the way, 56 quid this weekend for some away team spectators to watch a match, they have every right to shout at the referee. At the same time, I think they need to be aware of what referees are about. And that's what You Are the Ref's doing. We're actually saying, look, we're being a little bit more detailed about the performance of the referee. You know, we have RefCam. So we've got former assessors, former top officials. You know, Glenn Turner was a World Cup assistant referee. So let's make no mistake.
The comments have been constructive. The criticism is constructive. I think that's the point you're trying to make for the betterment of the game. Is there an element of referees and maybe even the management, though they would certainly deny it, of actually tuning into what you guys are saying and taking note?
Somebody's tuned in, because I see some of the weaknesses that we were seeing last year have been resolved. I think, first of all, on the appointment front, it's much better. I think it's helped by the fact that last year they probably had 3 referees that were in form out of a large number of referees. This year, I think that figure's more like 7. I think Anthony Taylor's grown up and he's now an outstanding referee. I think Madley and Pawson, 2 very similar referees, very, very good decision makers, who probably, if I was in post and I'm not, would be giving them a slight kick up the rear, because I think good is a foundation, but what we want is we want to move towards perfection. So they've got to put in that extra effort, and all they've got to do is, like I would encourage referees in the past to look at Paul and Webb as examples. All they've got to do is look at Clattenburg. And if they look at Clattenburg, even this weekend, and see his movement around the field, the courage to give a penalty kick, the outstanding decision to say, right, you've touched the ball twice, to recognise that, and then award an indirect free kick.
Yeah, we're talking, this is a recent game, isn't it, involving Mark Clattenburg.
Well, see,
by the time you watch this, it'll be
yeah,
recent.
But the whole aspect of it is, he's accurate in his decision making, puts the effort in, and he's setting, if you like, the bar where the bar should be in refereeing, and others have got to get up to it.
Finally, the aims and the ethos of You Are the Ref. I think it's fair to say it's not been motivated by commerce and
no,
money.
I think, in fairness to Jock Waugh, he's invested a lot of his own personal money here, and neither is it a group of referees or assistant referees that have come together wanting to beat everybody about their head. What we've done is get pundits who are of quality, and then look at refereeing in the hope that we can educate, first of all, younger referees coming through, and we're doing that. We've got a number of referees that we're actually advising, coaching, and helping in their career progression. And then at the same time, what we're trying to do is involve the public as a whole, or every stakeholder. You know, we've got spectators who can come on board, listen to what's been said, read what's been said, and then have their part to play. So I think it's really important that we, as a website, we're engaging on refereeing topics in the main and helping to educate and inform the public of the value of refereeing.
Because refereeing's part of the game, but it's a part of the game that's been rather kept below the radar, hasn't it? Very little discussion about it, probably encouraged by the Premier League and the PGMOL. It's almost as if they don't want it discussed.
Well, of course they don't, because, you know, if they neutralise aspects of refereeing comment, what they're doing is the focus is on the stations being able to criticise, and the headlines in the newspapers being able to criticise the referees. What I think is important is getting a balance and to say, look, this is why this player's being dismissed, or this is why a player's not being dismissed when he should have. You know, I don't think we should be encouraging referees not to see incidents when out on the field of play somebody acts in a violent manner or commits a reckless challenge with excessive force that should be dismissed, and they're tending to ignore it because actually it'll be looked at in review. I don't believe in that.
And just to finish, do you think that PGMOL should look at its PR in terms, maybe be a little bit more proactive, because there seems to be almost nothing coming from them unless it's a crisis situation when eventually you get a comment, but by and large there is no comment at all, is there, really, from that organisation? No,
and whilst I mean that accelerates You Are the Ref. It's given us a very it's given us a very solid foundation. No, I think that, you know, look, I've no doubt that Mike Riley can articulate and have his own view. He's an experienced former international referee. He's clearly had his hands tied because everything went through the press department that is controlled, however you look at it, by the Premier League. And therefore, in a way, I think the shortcomings are that referees have been frustrated by not having that level of support. Now, there's a point at which you might argue, just a minute, when you were in office, Keith Hackett, you probably did too much, and that might be a criticism that I'll absorb and take on board. And probably I did, because I publicly at times wanted people to see.
But I think you were slapped down more than once, weren't you, when you did break cover?
About 3 or 4 times. But effectively, no question that what I was trying to do was to ensure that the public were aware that referees were accountable, just like a player. A player who plays badly at the weekend is likely to be dropped and not get into the team the following week. And I was operating the same process.
The party line always seems to be, if one checks out, why isn't a certain referee? Well, there's only so many games to go around, you mustn't read anything into it, that kind of line. When in fact, the reality is that people get dropped, don't they?
Well, I mean,
why not admit it?
Well, I don't know, because I think effectively, sometimes you need a referee to have a rest physically. You know, you've got to understand that people, you know, the international referees are travelling backwards and forwards into Europe and sometimes the extremities of Europe, Kazakhstan and the like. So these are not short journeys, and they're into a challenging environment of a Champions League or a Europa League game. And they come back and, you know, they're pretty like low on energy. Yeah. So the appointment process is, if they've refereed a Europa game on a Thursday, you're not going to put them out Saturday, you're going to put them out Sunday. Now, you might consider that Sunday game, televised game, to be a bit too big, so you're then going to put them out Monday. But there seemed to be, at one period, no thought process in the appointments themselves, in the appointment profile. And, you know, when you had, at the outcome of that, let's look at that logistically. Because last year, I can guarantee you that Lee Mason, who took a lot of criticism from us, earned more money than Mark Clattenburg. Right? Because I know the system and how the payment process and the bonus process operates.
Doesn't seem to add up. And when it comes to all these journeys into Europe, I think it's fair to say that You Are the Ref has come a long way in a relatively short time, thanks to guys like Keith Hackett here. And thank you as well, especially to you, for supporting us and for watching. Tune in to more of our shows. Thanks very much, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you.